Hey fellas, and welcome back to Quite with a Y. And as I'm recording this, the Xbox Showcase as well as the Starfield Direct have just wrapped up. If you don't know, this time of year is usually when a bunch of the major game companies make their announcements, they'll hold a conference, and just kind of show everything they're working on to get people hyped for the next year and a half of games they're planning on releasing. Traditionally, it would have been done at E3 before the pandemic, where all the studios would come together and just kind of do it at the same time, and then it would be like a face-off of who won. We kind of have that this year, it's just more spread apart. I covered the PlayStation one, the Summer Games Fest, which is kind of more of a general games announcement sort of deal. And the Xbox one, the last major one was today. There's still like a Ubisoft conference, but I'll probably watch it. I just do not see myself talking about it. And yeah, I'm pretty confident in saying that if this was a competition, Xbox would have won it for me. But they've only won like the competition as far as the showcase goes. There's definitely a chance that all these games might suck. The thing, they just had a lot to show. There was a lot of games I came away from this thing being excited for and wanting to try out very actively. The meatiest is by far Starfield, and that's probably the one I'm anticipating the most because it's been around for the longest, and oh my god, I've been getting strung along. I've known about this damn thing since the conference they announced Elder Scrolls 6 in 2018. I always kind of just knew it in the back of my head passively as the next Bethesda game, but the more I watch, it like has me kind of excited. I watched this with the same group of friends I watched the last few with, where they had much more insight onto general Bethesda RPGs than I do. So let me go through my impressions. The game's really pretty, like it looks stellar. At least from the previews they've shown us, I think it's going really well. The environments are all really, really nice. From what I understand, it seems like they're auto-generated, like there's so many planets they have to be procedurally generated for the base, but all of them have like been gone back into and tweaked to actually have things to do within those terrain, and I'm hoping that like works out well. The only Bethesda RPG I've really played, if I'm being honest, is Skyrim, as you guys can tell, because that's the only one you've ever seen gameplay of on this channel. But because of that, I'm hoping that this is the thing that gets me into Bethesda as not just the dudes who made Skyrim and have this modding community, but also just the folks who make like some really solid RPGs. I'm hoping I can get into this and then maybe have a better appreciation of a Fallout 3 or New Vegas. I know New Vegas was Obsidian, but don't worry, we'll get to them because they had something to show out here too. The Starfield presentation was long, which makes sense because the game's coming out in 3 months, and we'd had very, very limited information on it. They showed us how in-depth the character creator was, where there's a bunch of presets that you can then absolutely contort to your will. Everybody loves a good character creator because you can just choose to not interact with it if you want to play the damn game and nothing else. It's just nice to see options. One thing I did notice though is that they would tease a lot of options, like you can sneak up behind someone while holding a knife and then stab them in the neck. Or there's a specific clip where they have a follower companion literally just titled Adoring Fan, and then they say you can point your gun at him, and then it cuts to black. There is just a bunch of moments where they seem like they're about to show you could do some cool shit, and then they just like cut it so you don't see what happens. On one hand, I respect that because it teases the possibilities in an authentic way without letting the payoff be ruined through the showcase. But it's also very funny to imagine that they're just lying. That stealth kill assassination, there's no animation for it. You just swing the knife and the dude ragdolls to the ground. I doubt that's how it is. I am excited for this game, but I also like being uncharitable for comedy's sake. I don't know how the skill point trees are going to play out in a practical sense. I will say the progression menu doesn't look that exciting to me. And I don't know, the abilities don't seem fun. It's just literally the UI and menu icons. They seem a bit generic. They're supposed to be kind of based off of the patches that you get in military service, which I think makes sense. Apparently Starfield's a game about finding extraterrestrial life, and humans are the only folks around that we know of. I'm interested to see how it goes. I hope they don't keep us in the dark on if they're aliens or not for long, because I would like them to be a bigger part of the story than just, I don't know, Jay chillin' at the very end of it. It seems like they've really beefed up base buildings, and your ship has a lot of customization options, and it also seems like it kind of acts as your base of operations. It's the most practical player home, and you're going to be flying around in it. Speaking of which, you'll literally be flying around in it in space, it seems, where you can like run into other ships and random events or something. I'm hoping it pans out organically and it's not just like hype material, but I am definitely hyped. You also have a mech that's just your little friend, and I kind of fuck with it. It's very much an interstellar rotating cube kind of deal. This robot looks more like Bastion from Overwatch than Stonehenge, but still, it's cool, and he has a funny little voice. Apparently you can make homesteads and outposts on planet that's around when I stopped watching because, like, you know, the details are cool, but a lot of this is stuff I'd want to explore in the game as it happens, or as other people get to experience it, and I can kind of be a part of that community aspect. Long story short, I am cautiously hyped. I'm really hoping to recapture that feel I get playing Skyrim even today after modding the shit out of it, and I really hope this game ends up having the kind of mod support that I'd still play Skyrim for to this day. But my faith really has been shaken in Bethesda, so we'll see how far that goes and how well they end up doing, in my opinion. And since Skyrim, things have really changed in the gaming industry. Like, think about it. Sony owns Bungie now. Xbox is now now putting Persona and Yakuza / Like a Dragon on Game Pass. If you don't know, Xbox just has never done well in Japan at all, so them going this hard on Japanese originating titles is huge, and I'm hoping it pays off because I like for Sony to have some more stiff competition at home. It's just like a complete reversal of how things were, not even just last generation, but even the one before that, I feel like. Xbox having Persona is neat for Persona fans, but I just don't care for it. It's a pretty game. I feel the aesthetics in Persona 5 and 4 are pretty close to unmatched, or at least with anything trying to do something similar to it. Unfortunately, I just do not like the games, or at least Persona 4 Golden, because that's the one I played on PC. I have a few videos on the second channel if you want to see like my first-hand frustrations with it. I just could not be asked to finish it. Part of it, I think, comes from just the turn-based format. That just might be a turn-off for me on some games, but I mean, I still like Pokemon. That could also be a nostalgia deal. I just have never really enjoyed the loop of Persona. I don't know, it's tedious to me. Not for me, but if it is for you, then I'm sure this is an exciting announcement, and I hope you enjoy it on Game Pass, because that means it's going to be really cheap. Pretty much all of these games are on Game Pass, from what I understand. Another one was Avowed, which is a fantasy game made by Obsidian. The magic looks really cool. Like, there's ways for you to imbue your weapons and shoot different types of projectiles out. It seems like a more fleshed out magic system than maybe we're used to. I hate that my point of reference for all of this is Skyrim, and then after that modded Skyrim, because I just have not played enough RPGs to be well versed on what makes these systems work. But as a primarily and pretty much exclusively Skyrim RPG player, I saw somebody doing stuff that I wish I could do in Skyrim, or I've made myself able to do in Skyrim with mods, and it's just the game's based around it, so I'm excited to see how it comes out. It almost feels like Microsoft, now that they are both in charge of Obsidian and Bethesda, saw, yeah, Elder Scrolls 6 is super hyped, but it's not coming out for like another half a decade. Let's just put something out there. That's me being a dick, uncharitable, and honestly probably just lying. The game itself looks like it has a really strong personal identity and knows what it's going for, and that excites me. South of Midnight didn't have any gameplay, but the trailer had a very appealing style. There wasn't super cringy dialogue or anything, and it left me on some kind of suspense where there's this big monster coming out the bayou. I didn't hate it. I'm excited to see where that goes. It's just you don't really know how it's going to pan out when you don't even have like a second of gameplay to go through. It was really stylized animation of the trailer, which was super pretty, but doesn't really tell me a lot about how it's actually going to feel. This is probably the biggest blue balls of the announcement, where they had a whole Overwatch 2 segment with some of the most grandiose music, I think, of the entire conference. And it was so done up and showing cutscenes and characters interacting and fighting PvE in new areas that me and the folks I was watching with thought, oh my god, they uncanceled the player versus enemy because canceling it the first time got such a bad response. It was like a really funny thing to laugh at, but it also would have been cool to be right. We weren't. And they used that to announce their fucking starter pack for Overwatch 2. I love the store update, man. This shit is awesome. Oh my god. I've made a whole video just being disappointed in Overwatch 2 already, mostly about the changes to Genji. If the PvE was gonna get revived here, and like that was a last minute change to the conference, that would have been like a really neat surprise, but it was probably a little unrealistic to even hope. Yeah, Overwatch 2 is dead in the water, and I do not give a fuck. The studio In Exile is working on a new game called Clockwork. It's steampunk aesthetics, which I have not seen in a while. A few of my friends were hemming and hawing, just really scared that steampunk might be making a resurgence because of this, like as if this is the first horseman of reviving that genre. I don't have too much to say about the game other than it looks cool. Some of the character designs are funky, but that comes with steampunk. And they had this cute little gag at the end where it was coming in due time. It was a bit of a Cyberpunk 2077, like coming when it's ready sort of deal, but I like the wordplay with the fact the game's name is literally Clockwork. It's cute. It doesn't speak to the quality, but I just like little things like that. And speaking of Cyberpunk though, they didn't announce the new DLC, but I believe we got the release date for it this time. It comes out like September 26th, and this thing is meaty. Like Keanu Reeves is back for new voice lines, and they hired Idris Elba just for this DLC. The studio making this, CD Projekt Red, apparently has a track record of, for their flagship mainline games, making DLCs that are essentially the size of new games. And I'm hoping that this is a similar deal as it was with that one Witcher 3 DLC, where it's worth getting an actor like Idris Elba in it and to advertise it because it's such a meaty expansion that you could really do a lot with it. That being said, I still need to play the original Cyberpunk storyline still, and when this DLC comes out, maybe that'll be the catalyst to get me off my ass. There was more Flight Simulator. You can now do hilltop rescues and interact. There's more Flight Simulator stuff. Apparently there's now like helicopter task simulations where you can put radio towers on top of their foundations. You can like airlift people who are injured in the wilderness or some shit. And also the ship from the Dune movie with the weird firefly, dragonfly looking wings is in Flight Simulator now too, if that's your, that's your thing. I don't know if the pilot's Timothy Chalamet, but here's hoping. Usually I'm more hyped for Star Wars games announcements, but this one is by Ubisoft, Star Wars Outlaws. The main character in the trailer has a nice coat, and I want it, but that's the most I have to say about this because the whole trailer was CG. It sounds like it's meant to be an open world kind of deal. It's made by the Supermassive, I forgot the studio name, but the people who made The Division. I've heard good things about that game's open world, just that it wasn't marketed super accurately, so if I go in with the right expectations, I can see myself enjoying this a decent amount. Payday 3 got announced. I have heard so much about Payday 2 from multiple different friends of mine who don't even know each other, talking about how many hours they've sank into it. And honestly, yeah, like Payday 3 looks like a fun experience, like a nice little tower defense deal. Not literally tower defense. My friend just said he had a tower defense build on the Payday 2. That's definitely one I'd pick up to try with my friends, and if it hooks me, like I keep it pushing. Another one is Hellblade 2. This got announced like last year, I think. Not even at the last Game Awards. I want to say like 2021 Game Awards. And that trailer was really impressive. It's super cinematic, but it seemed pretty flawlessly blended with the gameplay while still maintaining that cinematic experience. Not in a God of War sense where it's a single cut camera, but where the gameplay itself is slow and not choreographed, but it feels cinematic. I'm sorry I don't have more adjectives in my repertoire. I feel like I'm failing here. This new trailer was cool. It had some neat visuals, but it wasn't as exciting, and I don't really feel like I learned much from it. There was one cool scene where Senua gets pulled into the water of her reflection. And I've been thinking about playing Hellblade 1 for some time, and this might be the catalyst to actually get me off my ass and try it. I feel like I've said that about multiple games exactly the same way throughout all of these conference videos, but I mean, generally that's how I get started on these things. I see a sequel to a game that I've been meaning to play coming out, and I'm like, fuck, I gotta beat the buzzer. Now, Capcom, for me personally, showed out on this one with a single game that they had up, or at least the one game that stuck with me from them. It's called Path of the Goddess, and it looks super up my alley. It has really, really cool monster designs and kind of tight corridors where it seems like you fight them in. I wanted to say at first it was a DMC-looking hack and slash, but it seems like you have more companions with you, and there might be some more tactical, strategic parts about it where you have to direct your men. I don't know. The game just looked really cool, and when you slash your sword, there's like a cool after image behind it, which makes it immediately good. Something for Forza got announced. That's like the free space on the bingo card whenever I do an Xbox thing, so yeah. Still Wakes the Deep is a horror game, I think, that takes place on an oil rig in a stormy night. Oil rigs don't exist in any other conditions, let's be honest. I have never seen one in broad daylight. I've never seen one, period, in person, but ignore that. It's by the guys who made the game Dear Esther. I think I said that wrong. Something that was like really visually pretty, and I remember seeing in the background of like gameplay commentaries a while ago, but from what I've heard, while the narratives and like the environmental storytelling can be strong, apparently they're not really games, more just walking simulators. They launched the whole thing with a new Fable, which is funny since this is like at the end of the actual video I'm making. And I've never played a Fable game, so this might have some precedent in the older ones, but I thought it was going to be a borrower's kind of game, like just based off the book that I've not read and only know from fan fiction crossovers, because the narrator was huge and the person we actually saw gameplay of was tiny. I don't know if it's a hard or a soft reboot. It's just called Fable, but I mean, but seems like a good jumping into point for the game because I haven't done any other ones. Yeah, overall, I think Xbox had the best presentation, definitely kept my interest the most. Some people score it based on the amount of games shown that they'd want to play after having seen. The thing is, a lot of the games I wanted to play in previous conferences, both SGF and PlayStation, were games I was already excited to play, namely Spider-Man. This is the only one out of those three that had games I'm actively interested in learning more about, in that I also hadn't heard about before all of this. Like Starfield obviously was on my list, and we knew we were going to get information on that. There was literally an hour-long direct planned and announced before everything. But Avowed I hadn't heard of before this. Path of the Goddess I hadn't heard of before this. Hellblade 2 I'd known about, but it slipped my mind until this one, if I'm being honest, and hopefully it'll get me off my ass to play Hellblade 1. South of Midnight as well, the Like a Dragon game. I don't know, man. I'm positive. I'm looking forward to the Game Pass pickings in the near future. Anyways, that's all I got. Let me know what you guys are excited for in the comments if you watched it yourself, or if anything I've talked about here piques your interest. If you want to hit me with topics, go to kwytebox@gmail.com. Send whatever you want. Anyways, piss off.